lighting payment plan, etc. And all these transactions will involve a GST implication. Friends, GST is an important part of real estate sector, and since implementation, it's yet unsettled. So in today's webinar, we will be focusing on three major parts. First, tax implication arising out of COVID-19 for real estate sector. We will also discuss in the second part the emerging issues under the real estate sectors which the real estate is struggling for last 1 to 2 years. Third, we will touch base on the basics of GST on real estate for the audience who is new to real estate, and we all are on the same page. We will try to make this webinar more interactive rather than in a presentation mode, and it will be more of a question and answer scenario. So my first question is to Kapil ji. Kapil ji, generally when we talk about GST, GST is on supply of goods and services. Goods is movable property, and services anything other than goods. When we
Okay.
talk about a developer, see, a developer has a land, he builds a flat and a building on that, and he sells that commercial and residential units to the end customer, which generally a layman understand as a sale of immovable property chargeable to stamp duty. So what
Okay.
is the exact taxable event for a real estate? In which transaction, on what transaction is GST leviable?
Okay. Good afternoon, all the listeners. So we just try to take it to a very basic level. We will build from basic. Just to address the point under GST, the question to be asked is whether are we taxing the immovable property? Are we taxing the goods which are going into the immovable property? Or are we taxing the services? There can be only three aspects which we are looking at a real estate transaction wherein a developer constructs a immovable property and puts it on a sale to various buyers. These are the three broad aspects. Mal, that is the goods. Then on second hand, services, which goes into it, a labor component. Thirdly, the immovable property, because you get the title to the land also. These are the three things that you get in a immovable property. Going to the basics first, the question was first asked in 2010. So the service of real estate has a history almost of 10 years. The first time the central government, which was at that time taxing these as a services under Finance Act 1994. On 1st July 2010, the services were purported to be taxes under the two heads: construction of commercial complex or construction of residential complex. These were the category under which they were proposed to sell. The definition of service as given under taxable service as given under Finance Act of 1994 at 2010 under 65105 held that what they are only taxing is an event when a builder does a construction of an immovable property before receipt of completion certificate. I would like to emphasize everybody to keep a note of a simple term that GST or service tax has always tried to tax real estate which is till the stage of receipt of completion certificate, because artificially they put a tax, artificially they are deeming it to be a service which they are purporting to tax under service tax or GST till a particular stage, and that particular stage is receipt of completion certificate. In certain stages it is called occupancy certificate, and now it has also been added with a term called first occupation given to an independent buyer.
Sorry to
So
interrupt, Kapil ji. Can you be a little louder?
okay, so just to put you on the page, in GST, the taxable event is construction of an immovable property for a buyer who has come to buy an immovable property at the stage when the property is being constructed till the stage when the property is completed in terms of completion certificate. If any person books or pays any component of money till the point of completion certificate, the entire transaction is taxable under GST as a construction services or a works contract services or whatever name we want to call construction of complex services. The point to be noted is the law has a deeming fiction. Under the deeming fiction, what they say that the service is considered to be provided till the date the property is constructed, and that last date when the property is said to be completed has been deemed under the GST law as receipt of completion certificate. There can be two categories of broad buyers: any person booking property till the receipt of completion certificate. In that case, the entire consideration towards that immovable property service is taxable under GST. Case 2, second type of buyer would be a person who books a property after receipt of completion certificate. Any person who books the property after receipt of completion certificate, in that case, that transaction is considered to be sale and purchase of an apartment or a land or a building, which is not subject matter of GST, which is free from GST in that case. So these are the two broad categories. There is a deeming fiction. Deeming fiction applies. Any person who books the property till the stage of occupancy certificate is considered to be service receiver from a developer, and entire consideration in that case is taxable to GST. I hope this question is clear, because this is the basis of taxing the real estate transaction, because this levy has been challenged several times and the court has consistently held, right from High Court, which has been affirmed by Supreme Court, says that they are not taxing something called entry 49 under the state list, which is taxes on land and building. This entry is taxing services component or a labor component by which developer develops the immovable property for the buyer. And this levy has been upheld by the courts and considered to be valid. On that premises, last 10 years, people have been continuously paying service tax and GST on the construction of a real estate transaction.
Perfectly fine, Kapilji. Now, what you just discussed was in respect of booking of a residential or commercial unit. How about sale of plots? There are developers who are engaged in sale of plots. Whether sale of plots attract GST?
Okay, very valid question. Whether the sale of plot will be considered to be a transaction of a real estate wherein developer will be considered to be a service provider, or is it a case of a sale of a land? I will repeat again. The transaction of sale of land is covered by list 2, which is a state list under a Constitution of India. Under entry 49, entry 49 deals with taxes on land and building. Only and only state government can tax a transaction on land and building, not other person can tax. We know GST is a mixture of both center and state levying tax concurrently. Therefore, a pure transaction of sale of land is not covered within the purview of GST per se. You may refer to your screen under the last head called para 5 of schedule 2. Sale of land is outside the purview of GST. Schedule 3 only covers those items on which they are considered neither as supply of goods nor are they considered as supply of services. Namely, anything falling under schedule 3 will be considered to be outside the purview of tax. The entry is sale of land or sale of building, subject to exception. Exception is what just I have explained to you a while back. So pure transaction of sale of land and sale of building is not covered by GST. Coming back to question posed by Tusharji, whether sale of plot is taxable or not, you may refer to the recent ruling which have come out, advanced ruling I'm talking about, which have come out on taxability of plot, wherein I feel the view taken by department is not actually in line with law, because in a case of a sale of plot, the buyer is not interested in any other thing but this piece of land which is called plot. There are certain added services which are provided to the buyer in case of a sale of plot, which can be in various nature. But transaction from a developer is offered to plot of a land, and that of plot of land is already under a project. Under that project, that land is a marketable land. there is no element of services by way of construction of anything which is provided by a developer to the buyer with respect to plot, because plot is given as a bare leveled land. There may be a demarcation on it by way of certain bricks, which is generally a case, nothing more than it. So that is an incidental transaction. Developer is not developing anything on that land per se for the buyer which has come to buy. So my view is little different from what has been taken in the advanced ruling. To me, sale of plot of land is akin to sale of land which is covered by Schedule 3. There should not be any subject matter of GST on the BSP and PLC which are taken towards sale of plot of land. That's my view. I feel that they are squarely covered by taxes, entry 49. If you are taxing them in GST, it is straight away encroaching into a state legislation, which according to me is challengeable. I know there are rulings which are counter to it. I know there has been a constant dispute on it, but my position is backed with certain degree of law development on this with the authority that they are a transaction of sale of land and there is no service attached to it. That's my take on this.
So no GST on sale of plot. Now, coming to our next question, this is to Gaganji. And from 1 April 2019, from 1st April 2019, there has been various changes in the real estate sector. The rate of taxes have undergone change in respect of residential projects, commercial projects, affordable projects. There are conditions attached in certain projects, etc. Gaganji, can you give us an overview of the latest GST rates applicable on real estate project and the conditions which the real estate developers have to comply with?
I want to confirm, am I audible?
Yes, Gaganji, you are audible. Can you be a little louder?
Yes. Yes, sir. So coming to GST rate on real estate sector, which have been introduced from 1st April 2019, before going into the actual rates, I want to first discuss the various terms which the government has introduced in the various rate notification. So even before that, I want to highlight that the various notifications have been introduced for the real estate sector from 1st April 2019 in respect of exemption, rate notification, reverse charge applicability. And one thing which is coming out from all these notification is that the GST provisions have been somewhere or the other linked to the RERA part also. So now here I am discussing that the kind of projects under GST, the types of projects under GST. So starting with the project here means a project which is separately registered under RERA. Say a company is developing a township, they may have a single license, single JDA, single landowner, single developer, but they have 4 different RERA registration. So each such registration will be treated as a different project for the purpose of GST. Now, taking this forward, the project can be new project also, a project can be ongoing project also. Our ongoing project is one which was already in existent stage as on 1st April 2019 and was yet to be completed. A new project is one which has been commenced after 1st April 2019. Though there is a specific definition of this, we are not going into that for the purpose of rate. Thereafter, these two projects can be further subdivided into REP and RREP. RREP is a project. RREP means residential real estate project. RREP is a project which means where the carpet area of the commercial apartment is up to 15% of the total project area. And real estate project for our purpose will be where the carpet area of commercial apartment is more than 15%. So any project having 90% residential and 10% commercial will be residential real estate project, because majorly it is a residential part. If the commercial part is more than 15%, it will be REP. Now coming to rate notification. So the rates are very simple depending upon the classification of the apartment. So if it is a case of affordable apartment, if you could all see the right side of the PPT, if it is a case of affordable apartments, then the effective GST rates are 1% without eligibility of ITC. And if it is a case of residential apartment other than affordable, then it will be taxed at 5% without eligibility of ITC. And for these two purposes, residential and affordable, the bifurcation of REP and RREP is not relevant. The rate will remain to be 1% or 5% without ITC. But as far as commercial apartments are concerned, in case of RREP, where predominantly the portion is residential and the carpet area of commercial apartment is less than 15%, the rate of commercial apartment has been equated with the residential apartments, and which means that the commercial apartment in RREP will be taxed at 5% without ITC. However, in case of REP, that is where the carpet area of the commercial apartment is more than 15% in a project, then the commercial apartment will be taxed at 12% with the eligibility of ITC. Secondly, the rates which I have told you, 1%, 5% and 12%, these are effective GST rate. The government gives 1/3 deduction of the land value. So if you see the bare notification, the rates are 1.5, 7.5 and 18%. So these are after deduction of 1/3 land value. These are the effective GST rate. And again, for the better understanding, the terms affordable, residential other than affordable means as follows. The residential apartment means apartment intended for residential use as declared to the RERA. And commercial apartment means apartment anything other than residential. And affordable residential apartment means there is a specific definition. This is a specific definition under GST. That is, the gross amount charged is less than 45 lakh rupees, and the carpet area is up to 60 square meter in metropolitan cities and up to 90 square meter in non-metropolitan cities. And to conclude, the rates are 1% and 5% in case of residential and other than affordable. And commercial part, there are two rates, 5% and 12%, and these are effective GST rates. And to conclude, these new rates are mandatory for the new projects. However, in case of ongoing project, which was already in existent stage as on 1st April 2019, the government gave the option on 1st April 2019 that either you could adopt for new rate or you could adopt for old rate. So we have mentioned here the new rates. The old rates were very simple, 12% and 8%. 8% was in case of affordable and 12% was in case of all the units, whether it was residential or commercial, with the eligibility of ITC.
Gaganji, just two questions here in respect of rate before we move on to conditions. If in a project I have both affordable units as well as non-affordable units, like certain units are above 60 square meters and certain units are below 60 square meters.
Mm-hmm.
So whether this 1% and 5% I have to see project wise or is it unit wise?
Yes. So this rate notification, the exact GST rate I have to compute for each unit. It is very much possible that a single project, a single tower or a single floor has two different kinds of units. There can be a one affordable unit or there can be another other than affordable units. And the rates will have to be determined for each specific unit. And it is not a rate notification which is project wise. It is a unit wise.
Okay. And in respect of affordable project, you explained that the rate of tax is 1% for the residential units. What about
Yes.
the rate of tax of commercial units in respect of affordable? Residential non-affordable, clear it is 5%. What about affordable commercial unit in an affordable project?
So coming to this, there is no such term such as affordable project in the new rate notification. There is affordable residential apartment, residential other than affordable, and there is a commercial. So as far as commercial is concerned, there are only two rates. If it is a case of RREP, it will be 5%. If it is a case of REP, it will be 12%. Other than this, there cannot be anything rate that 1% with GST will be the rate. So in case of say affordable project, as per the government policy, the units are taxed at 1% residential. But if there are 2-3 shops or a small portion of the shops are there, then it will be taxed at 5%, not 1%. For commercial, there is only 5% and 12%.
Perfect, Gaganji.
Okay. So
now, how about the conditions?
Yes, sir. So moving on to the rate conditions. So these new rates are subjected to various conditions. So one biggest condition we have already discussed, that these are reduced concessional rate without the eligibility of ITC. I am dealing all the rate conditions. So first condition is that you will have to pay the tax by cash only. You cannot use your ITC. But the question comes up, if I am not eligible to avail ITC, then what is the question of paying the paying the tax through ITC? So you might be having unutilized ITC, you might be having ITC from other incomes. So the government is very clearly in this types of rate notification that you will have to pay tax by cash only. And this kind of condition is a very peculiar in GST as far as my output liability is concerned, because in case of RCM supplies, there is a separate part that you will have to pay by tax. But as far as output liability is concerned, this is a very peculiar case in real estate where the government is saying you will have to pay the tax by cash only. Second condition, we have already discussed that you are not allowed to avail the ITC in case of 1% and 5% concessional rate. Thereafter, the next condition is ITC reversal as per Annexure 1 and 2. This condition is was for the ongoing project. If the ongoing project as on 1st April 2019 adopted for the new rates, then they had to do certain kind of reversal calculation as per Annexure 1 and 2 of the rate notification. So this was the condition mentioned in the rate notification only, that if an ongoing project is adopting for new rates, then they will have to do the calculation as per Annexure 1 and 2. Fourth condition, this is a fourth, not a condition, it is actually a relaxation, which says that ITC is eligible in the hands of landowner promoter. I said that in case of 1% and 5%, ITC is not eligible. But there is one exception to this.
Gaganji, can you be a little louder?
Yes, sir. So in case of ITC eligibility, in case of JDA, normally in case of area sharing, where the portion of units are allocated to the landowner, so the developer charge GST to the landowner like he charged to the normal customer. So the GST charged by the developer to the landowner for the area allocated by the developer, this ITC will be eligible to the landowner. So this is the only exception in the rate notification where ITC is allowed to the landowner promoter for the tax charged by the developer promoter. Next condition, very critical condition, it says that 80% of the inputs and input services should be procured from registered supplier in a financial year. 80% of inputs and input services should be procured from a registered supplier. This condition has to be seen project wise. This condition has to be seen financial year wise. And the immediate next condition to this, very relatable to that, is that, and further, if you have not procured 80% of the inputs and input services from registered suppliers, say in a project in a particular year, you have procured 75% of the value from registered supplier, then you will have to pay GST at the rate of 18% on the 5% value of input and input services. That is the shortfall. For the shortfall, the developer will be liable to pay GST at the rate of 18%. However, the government has also said that if you have procured cement from any unregistered supplier, then you are liable to pay GST under reverse charge ad hocly, and the rate here is 28%. Since the GST rate for cement is 28%, the government has tried to discourage it from unregistered suppliers. So if any developer purchase cement from unregistered supplier, they will have to pay under reverse charge. The last condition, you will have to maintain project-wise accounting of your inward supplies. That the things I've told you, registered supplier, unregistered supplier, your ITC ineligible for that particular project. You will have to maintain the project-wise accounting. When I said in the starting that government has linked to the various provisions of RERA, I have said this from that perspective. They have said that project to be a RERA-wise, and they have said that also to maintain the project-wise accounting of that particular project. So these are the conditions.
Thank you, Gaganji. So very important point that even though no ITC is available to the developer, still they need to account for ineligible ITC, whatever GST they are paying on procurement, they need to account it and show it in their returns also. So very important point. So there is a question from the audience that when we are talking about this 80% from registered supplier, now what about interest, etc., interest on secure loan which I pay to the bank, etc., banks are also registered. So whether it will be counted for this 80% calculation, this applies, which bank is charging the interest which I'm paying to the bank, this bank is registered.
So this is a very important question in the sense that a real estate industry or a real estate company usually have a very high amount of interest or financing cost. So the condition in the rate notification simply says that 80% of input and input from registered supplier, registered person. They don't say that you will have to procure by through a tax invoice, that the GST should have been paid. Further, the government has clarified through FAQ also that exempt supplies will also be covered in this calculation. So in the example which you taken, that if interest cost is there which is exempt but the bank is registered, so that will be counted as procured from registered supplier only. It will not be counted as unregistered supplier.
Okay, it's a very welcome interpretation. Now, my next question is to Pritam ji, and I will request all the panelists to be a little faster and precise with the answers because we have more than 20-25 questions and we hardly have 1 hour left. Pritam ji, under real estate, we see developer charging different types of charges from the customer in the nature of preferential location, club charges, car parking, electricity metering charges, you have interest on delayed payment, holding charges, etc. Can you just give an overview about the taxabilities of these charges, whether these are independent or part of construction, how it has to be taxed? What is the principle behind taxing such charges?
Yes, Tushar. So now coming back to the charges, firstly, we have to understand whether the charges are in the nature of an independent supply or these charges taken by the developer are in relation to construction services only. When we talk about in relation to the construction services, it has two main parts. One, firstly, whether these services, these charges forms integral part of the construction services or these charges form ancillary part of the construction services. Now, coming back to the question, first part is preferential location charges. To understand this, let's take an illustration, a small illustration. Suppose I book a flight ticket, and while booking that flight ticket, I also pay a premium or charges for a premium seat. Whether the charges paid for procuring that premium seat is in relation to my original supply, that is airline tickets, yes. So in this case, in case I don't book my airline ticket, I will not be able to enjoy the benefits of the premium seats which I booked. So the extra charges which I paid for procuring the premium seats is in relation to the airline tickets. So it can be said that both the supplies are a composite supply and predominantly the principal supply, that is the booking of the airline ticket is the main supply and booking of the premium seat is in relation to the main supply. So coming back to our question about the preferential location charges, these preferential location charges can be said to be in relation or the integral part of the construction services in relation to the basic selling price, because without booking a unit, you cannot take the benefits for the preferential locations. So over the preferential location charges, the rate applicable to the basic selling price shall be applicable. Now coming back to the second question about the parking charges. So car parking charges can be divided into two main parts. One is the mandatory charges. The developer has mandated over the customer to buy these, or the optional. There is an option at the end of the customer or the unit holder. In both the cases, in a simple terms, in case the property in relation to the car parking charges has been transferred to the customer or the unit holder, in that case it can be said that the intention of the developer was that the car parking charges forms an integral part of the construction services, and hence the reduced or the effective rate in relation to the construction shall be applicable. That is the 12% or the 5%, whatever the case may be. And in case the property has not been transferred, then the rate, it will be treated as an independent supply and the rate shall be applicable is 18%. In case of a refundable deposits, it can be said, in case of an IFMS, it can be said that these forms part of the refundable deposits and tax need not be paid over the same at the time of receipt of the IMFS from the unit holder or the customer. However, when the IFMS has to be applied in respect of services or the AMC charges, then the tax over the same has to be paid as the independent services, independent supply. Now, coming back to the interest on delayed payments. interest on delayed payment as per section 15 forms the consideration, and it forms part of supply as per the principal supply. So the rate at which the principal supply is taxable, interest over the same is also to be taxable at the same rate. Interest over the basic selling price has to be taxable at the 12% or 5%, whatever the case may be. Interest over car parking charges again has to be taxed as if it was forming part of basic selling price or it was an independent activity. Third thing in relation to interest on delayed payment is when the tax has to be paid. The tax has to be paid only on the received basis. Whenever the developer receives that interest, tax over the same has to be paid at that particular period, at that particular time. Now coming back to the club memberships, we can always take a view in relation to the car parking charges. In case the property over the same has been transferred and the stamp duty has been paid by the unit holders, then we can prima facie say that these forms, the intention of the developer was to treat this as the integral part of the construction services and hence taxable at the rate at which the basic selling price of the construction service is taxable. And in case it does not form part, the property has not been transferred, then we can say that the club membership forms as an independent supply and should be taxable at a rate of 18%.
Thank you, Peterji. So in fact, we have twofold tests which have been applied. The first test is whether such additional charges are integral and ancillary to my main service of construction. Second, whether the stamp duty is being paid on such additional charges is. If answer to the both is yes, it will form part of construction services. We request all the panelists to even speak a little bit in Hindi also, because we are getting few requests from the chat box and there are various questions being posted in the chat box. We will take all these questions in the end of our presentation. Now,
I would also like to mention to all our live streamers on YouTube, they can also post their queries in the comment section. All those queries will also be taken at the end of the session. Thank you.
now, my next question is to you, Kapilji, and it's a very precise question. I am a developer. I sold one unit in July 2017 after GST. I raised demand financial year 17-18, then 18-19, and then 19-20. Now in April 2020, this unit is getting cancelled. What about the GST which I have already paid on the demand note raised in the last 3 years? Can I get the adjustment or refund of the GST of the demand note raised in financial year 17-18, 18-19, 19-20, all 3 years?
Okay. So let me do justice to this question. This is the most critical question. This is the most oftenly asked question by developer as well as the buyer. What about the money that I paid to the developer on account of tax? Can I get the money back? Always buyer kahega ki mujhe mera tax वापस चाहिए. I need money back with my tax. Whereas developer will say like मैंने जो आपसे लिया टैक्स, मैं तो सिर्फ एक मैकेनिज्म था, मैं तो एक एजेंट था, वो मैंने टैक्स सरकार को जमा करा दिया. From where do I give it back? So this is the most common tussle today in the real estate sector. With this COVID-19 impact also, I think this question will be one of the frequently asked question on a real estate forum. Give me time, because according to me, this question needs time. I will take 5 minutes to explain you basic and then try to answer all the scenarios which can arise. Please understand, ध्यान देने की जरूरत ये है. First, the money that you paid along with tax. So आपके पास demand थी, base amount of demand or tax. That base amount of demand and tax you have paid to developer, and in turn developer में उसमें से जो tax का component था has paid the government that money of tax which he has collected from you. So understand first question, the money which is on account of GST is not pocketed by developer, it goes straight away to the government exchequer. वो सरकार के पास पैसा चला जाता है. Correct? Number one. Number two, क्रेडिट वापस लेने का तरीका क्या है? जब भी यूनिट कैंसिल होता है तो कॉमन प्रैक्टिस ये होती है, डेवलपर विल रिटेन सर्टेन अमाउंट एंड विल रिफंड बैक द सर्टेन अमाउंट. अब वो जितना अमाउंट वो रिटेन कर रहा है उस पे तो टैक्स वापस देने का सवाल ही नहीं है. सपोज आपका यूनिट 1000 रुपए का था और आपने 100 रुपए उसको अलॉन्ग विद टैक्स दे रखे थे, यानी कि आपने उसको 100 और रेट मान लेते हैं चलो 5 रुपए था, तो आपने उसको 105 दे रखे थे, राइट, इन माय एग्जांपल। नाउ व्हेन दिस यूनिट गेट कैंसल्ड, उसमें सिनेरियो होगा जो 100 + 5 ऑन अकाउंट ऑफ टैक्स दे रखे थे वो पूरे के पूरे तो वापस मिलेंगे नहीं, और कंपोनेंट ऑफ इच विल बी गेट बैक, तो उसके लिए रेरा भी है, मैं रेरा वगैरह नहीं जा रहा, अदरवाइज इट विल बिकम अ कॉम्प्लेक्स, ठीक है। तो वो जो भी पैसा अपने पास रखता है, सपोज वो अपने पास 40 रुपीज रखता है और 60 वापस करने की बात करता है, तो लेट अस अंडरस्टैंड द ओनली रीजनेबल रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम द बायर कैन बी फॉर 60 प्लस टैक्स ऑन 60, क्योंकि जो 40 डेवलपर रख रहा है अलॉन्ग विद टैक्स कंपोनेंट वो तो आप वापस मांगोगे नहीं, बिकॉज उस पर तो टैक्स सरकार को जा चुका है। एट द बेस्ट द रिक्वेस्ट फ्रॉम बायर कुड बी कि जो मुझे पैसा वापस मिल रहा है विच इज 60 इन माई क्वेश्चन, और मेरा टोटल टैक्स था 5 रुपए, तो 5 का कंपोनेंट करेंगे प्रोपोर्शनेट, तो 3 रुपए बन जाता है टैक्स का 60 पे, राइट। तो बायर बोलेगा मुझे 63 वापस दे दो, डेवलपर बोलेगा मैं 60 वापस दूंगा, 5 तो मैं जो आपसे लिए थे वो सरकार को दे चुका हूं। यहां तक सब लोग आई थिंक शुड बी ऑन सेम पेज, बिकॉज ये बेसिक है। अब इसके बाद आप 3 चीजें टेस्ट करिए, ठीक है, इसके 3 फोल्ड में आंसर है। लॉ के हिसाब से एक मैकेनिज्म होता है क्रेडिट नोट का, जो सेक्शन 34 में कंटेन्ड है। क्रेडिट नोट की टाइम लिमिट भी लॉ में प्रिस्क्राइब्ड है, जो बोलता है जिस फाइनेंशियल ईयर में इनवॉइस आई थी उसका क्रेडिट नोट फॉलोइंग एंड ऑफ फाइनेंशियल ईयर से सितंबर से पहले हो जाना चाहिए। यानी कि अगर मैं इसको टेबल में डालता हूं, अगर हम फाइनेंशियल ईयर 17-18 ले रहे हैं, तो क्रेडिट नोट जो है 17-18 के बाद जो क्रेडिट नोट सितंबर आएगा वो सितंबर ऑफ 18 आएगा, दो वो एक्सटेंड हो गई थी मार्च तक, बट हम मानते हैं कि वो 18 सितंबर जो है 30 सितंबर 2018 इज अ लास्ट डेट ऑन विच क्रेडिट नोट फॉर फाइनेंशियल ईयर 17 एंड 18 कैन बी इशूड। उसके बाद आप क्रेडिट नोट का रास्ता नहीं ले सकते, ठीक है। इस पे बाद में आऊंगा कि क्रेडिट नोट होगा या नहीं होगा, उस पे बाद में आते हैं। बट अगर क्रेडिट नोट जाना है तो उसकी टाइम लिमिट भी फॉलो होनी है, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, लॉ में रिफंड का मैकेनिज्म है। रिफंड का मैकेनिज्म है, रिफंड मतलब सरकार को आपको रिफंड एप्लीकेशन फाइल करनी पड़ेगी। रिफंड के लिए भी टाइम लिमिट जो प्रेस्क्राइब्ड है वो 2 ईयर की प्रेस्क्राइब्ड है, यानी कि जिस इनवॉइस पे आपने सरकार को पैसा दिया है उस पेमेंट के 2 साल के अंदर हम रिफंड अप्लाई कर सकते हैं। उसके बाद वो रिफंड एक टर्म होती है टाइम बार्ड, यानी कि वो उसका टाइम निकल चुका है, आप उस रिफंड को सरकार को एप्लीकेशन नहीं डाल सकते। रिफंड की जब बात करते हैं तो एक चीज हमेशा ध्यान रखिए, एक प्रिंसिपल होता है लीगल अनजस्ट एनरिचमेंट का। रिफंड उसी को मिलता है जिसने टैक्स बर्डन बियर करा है। अगर मैं अपने एग्जांपल में डिस्कस करूं, अगर बिल्डर रिफंड के लिए अप्लाई करेगा तो बिल्डर को प्रॉब्लम ये आएगी कि बिल्डर ने तो 5 रुपए टैक्स नाम के बायर से लिए और सरकार को जमा करा दिए, बिल्डर ने तो वो पैसे बियर नहीं करे, उसका बर्डन तो बायर ने बियर किया है। तो अगर बिल्डर अप्लाई करेगा तो बिल्डर को अनजस्ट एनरिचमेंट लग जाएगा, ये कहते हुए कि आपने तो ये बर्डन बियर ही नहीं किया था, मैं आपको रिफंड क्यों दूंगा, रिफंड तो मैं बायर को दूंगा जिसने लिया था। बायर के एंड पे चैलेंज ये आता है कि बायर इज एन अनरजिस्टर्ड, पोर्टल आज की डेट में ऑनलाइन एप्लीकेशन मांगता है, तो वो प्रैक्टिकल एक चैलेंज आ जाता है कि बायर डायरेक्टली रिफंड के लिए अप्लाई नहीं कर सकता। अब क्वेश्चन आता है कौन रिफंड अप्लाई करेगा इसका, ठीक है। उसका आंसर, एक आंसर ये बनता है प्रोबेबल कि जो बिल्डर है वो 60 प्लस उस पे जीएसटी 3 रुपए 63 रुपए बायर को दे दे, और बायर को देने के बाद 3 रुपए के लिए डिपार्टमेंट में रिफंड फाइल करे। तो प्रॉब्लम ये आती है तुषार इसमें बेसिकली कि बिल्डर ये बोलता है कि इफ आई पे यू द मनी, वेयर इज द गारंटी दैट आई विल गेट दिस मनी फ्रॉम डिपार्टमेंट। एंड इन टेक्निकल टर्म्स रियल एस्टेट में डिपार्टमेंट रिफंड जल्दी अलाउ नहीं करता, सो दैट मैटर अभी 3 साल में रिफंड मिले भी नहीं है फॉर द एप्लीकेशन व्हिच हैज ऑलरेडी बीन फाइल्ड। ये तो सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है। 2 ही रास्ते हैं, या क्रेडिट नोट की टाइम लिमिट फॉलो करनी पड़ेगी, रिफंड विद इन 2 इयर्स फाइल करना पड़ेगा। अब आप सारे एक सिनेरियो इसमें रख सकते हैं। एक सिनेरियो आपका आएगा कि डिमांड जो सर्विस टैक्स में करी थी, क्या उसका रिफंड मिल सकता है? देखो उसका क्रेडिट नोट तो हो नहीं सकता, बिकॉज वो टाइम लिमिट तो निकल चुकी है उसकी, तो उसका रिफंड मिल सकता है। आंसर है कि जो सर्विस टैक्स रिजीम थी उस समय टाइम लिमिट फॉर फाइलिंग रिफंड वाज 1 ईयर, नॉट 2 इयर्स अंडर 11B। तो वो 1 ईयर तो फ्रॉम डेट ऑफ पेमेंट निकल चुका है, तो सर्विस टैक्स का चैप्टर तो बंद कर दीजिए कि सर्विस टैक्स का रिफंड मिल सकता है। According to me, that is absolutely not possible to get the refund of money which has been paid on account of service tax to the developer and developer has paid to the government. वो possible नहीं है. Possibility सिर्फ GST में आती है only that demand note या तो जिसका टाइम लिमिट नहीं निकला है या जिसका क्रेडिट नोट है. तो यार आपके एग्जांपल में यूनिट जो था वो 17-18 में बुक था GST में, राइट? और उसमें तीनों साल में डिमांड नोट आए थे. एग्रीड? तो अब आप देख के चलो कि विद रिस्पेक्ट टू डिमांड नोट जो 1920 में हुए थे, मैं ब्रेक कर रहा हूं क्वेश्चन को, 1920 में जो डिमांड नोट हुए थे उसका क्रेडिट नोट करने की लास्ट डेट है 30 सितंबर 2020, राइट? So far as the demand note which have been raised in 1920, time limit for issuance of credit note has not expired, and developer can adjust that money by way of a credit note, and he can take back the money in his tax adjustment column under the prescribed procedure. 1920 का पॉसिबल है. चलते हैं उससे पहले वाले साल में 1819 में. 1819 का जो था वो सितंबर ऑफ 19 तक क्रेडिट नोट कर सकते थे. सितंबर ऑफ 90 is now a gone date. I can't go back and claim by way of credit note. तो 1819 का मुझे देखना पड़ेगा कि 1819 का मुझे रिफंड मैकेनिज्म में जाना पड़ेगा, और वो भी रिफंड भी उसी डिमांड नोट कर सकता हूं जो 2 साल के पेमेंट डेट के प्रिस्क्राइब पीरियड में आए. एग्जांपल देता हूं, अगर 1 अप्रैल 2018 को डिमांड नोट हो गया था तुषार,
राइट,
तो मेरे लिए प्रॉब्लम है,
राइट,
क्योंकि उसका अगर टैक्स सपोज पेमेंट हो गया, चलो अभी तो कुछ टेक्निकली कुछ दिन बचे हैं, बट टेक्निकली अगर आप देखोगे तो उसका टाइम लिमिट निकलता जा रहा है. 17-18 का तो गॉन केस है. देखो ना तो उसका क्रेडिट नोट हो पाएगा, टाइम लिमिट है नहीं, रिफंड भी नहीं हो सकता बिकॉज पेमेंट डेट के 2 साल क्रॉस हो चुके हैं. ठीक है, उससे पहले का पीरियड सर्विस टैक्स का है जिसमें टाइम लिमिट 1 साल थी. देयरफॉर देयर इज नो केस एंड नो प्रोबेबल आर्गुमेंट दैट यू कैन गो. तो यार कई बार बहुत सारे हमसे क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं फोरम पे कि क्या ये आर्गुमेंट ले सकते हैं कि जो सर्विस टैक्स में जो पैसा दिया था, क्योंकि यूनिट कैंसिल हो गया, सर्विस प्रोवाइडेड नहीं है, जो पैसा दिया था वो टैक्स के नेचर का ही नहीं है.
एब्सोल्युटली.
तो अगर वो टैक्स के नेचर का ही नहीं है तो आप ये टाइम लिमिट 11B वाली क्यों लगा रहे हो? ये तो लगेगी नहीं मुझ पे, क्योंकि इट इज नॉट पेड एज अ टैक्स.
राइट सर.
तो यार उसका मैं लीगल आंसर करता हूँ. वो आर्गुमेंट बहुत अच्छा लगता है. देखो किसी भी वकील को लड़ाई करना बहुत अच्छा लगेगा, उसका ब्रेड एंड बटर, राइट? बट यू हैव टू प्लीज अप्रिशिएट वेरी सिंपल पॉइंट कि क्या ये टेस्ट कोर्ट में स्टैंड हो सकता है. मैं आंसर देने की कोशिश करता हूं एंड आई थिंक आप सब लोग कॉमन सेंस से भी इसका आंसर निकाल लोगे. मैं आपको सिंपल आंसर देता हूं. व्हेन यू हैव पेड द मनी एट दैट टाइम वेदर इट इज अ सर्विस और नॉट. जब मेरा डिमांड नोट करा था उस समय तो सर्विस प्रोवाइड करी थी. एट दैट सर्विस आई पेड टैक्स. So the money that has gone to tax is against a particular services which is provided under the deeming section of law, and that is rightly assessed to service tax. Then thereafter you have filed your returns also. आपकी assessment भी close हो चुकी है, आपको audit भी close हो चुका है. Today, after all this process has been completed, just because unit get cancelled, you can't go back and say what I have paid earlier in service tax regime was not in the nature of tax. You have to please appreciate this simple point that whatever money has been collected and paid by the developer at the time when service was provided was in the nature of tax. Today, it is a post facto event which has arisen. The post facto event does not give a right for you to go back and reverse the time limit and file for refund claim. Please इस चीज को understand करिए, appreciate करिए. This point is clear. I don't think so. Yes, there is one Chennai High Court ruling or Madras High Court ruling which says in case of an excise, it is not in the nature of tax. I know it is there. Some people will come back and question me, why can't we apply? Yes, for a sake of argument, if you are desperate, it can be tested. But the chances of success are, Tushar, not very high on that case, to be honest with you.
Right, sir. And a question incidental to this, in our example which you gave, you said that we are talking about returning 60 rupees along with the GST on 60 rupees, that is 3 rupees. And we discussed that for 17-18, we don't have any choice, we don't have any recourse. For 18-19, yes, refund possible because it is within 2 years. And for 19-20, credit not possible. What about the rupees 40 which I am retaining? Though tax is already paid on that rupees 40 because at the time of receipt, the developer must have paid either at the rate of 5% or 12% as the case may be. Now we have seen departmental officers giving show cause notice stating that this 40 rupees is in the nature of tolerating back this forfeiture amount and it should be chargeable as a separate supply at 18%. Sir, your view on this in just 1 minute because we have lack of time?
Very valid question asked. Let me answer that. I think I have answered this very clearly. The taxability has to be determined at the time as money has been received. When you are collecting the demand note, when you are collecting the money based on demand note, the simple preposition applies: service provided or agreed to be provided. So when we speak, there are two taxable events under the service tax as well as the GST. An agreement to provide service also is a service under GST, and it is a deemed services. Therefore, when I have demanded, the money that I have been paid is on a taxable event. In that case, I have a big challenge that I can't go back tomorrow and say it is not an agreement to provide services. Therefore, it is an agreement to provide services, and that service is that of a construction. Now, just because post facto event has happened and the unit has been cancelled, there is no new taxable event which arises for the 40 rupees. 40 rupees is only for agreement to provide services, on which applicable tax rate at the 12%, 5% have been paid as per the prevailing scheme. You don't have to change the taxable event at a later date just to tax it. I know department is contesting this, but there is one circular of department in respect of airlines which clearly says, when you have collected the money based on the airline ticket issued for a travel at later date, the taxable event is agreement to provide services, and later on cancellation, when you retain the money, the taxable event does not change. There is one circular on that point that helps you. By and large, it is a fightable battle. The chances of success is more than 95%, so to rate.
Noted, sir. My next question is to Preetham ji. You are undertaking various GST audits, departmental audits of real estate, etc. We just want to know from you your experience on how department is actually scrutinizing the GST returns of a taxpayer. I'm not going into the major legal questions like taxability of development rights, cancellation, etc. From returns perspective, what are 4 or 5 major areas which our developer should keep in mind? Please elaborate, maximum in 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay, Tushar. So with respect
be a little louder, sir.
Okay, so Tushar, regarding the same, what department is contending, we can break into two parts. One is in relation to outward supply and another is in relation to the inward supply. When we talk about the outward supply, हमारे जितने भी developers हैं, the majority of the developers, what they do is that they issue demand notes through their CRM software, that is the customer relationship managers management software. So all the demand notes are raised through those CRM softwares, and these demand notes are raised as and when they are due. जिस दिन भी उसकी पेमेंट ड्यू हो जाती है कस्टमर से, CRM ऑटोमेटिकली वो डिमांड नोट रेज कर देता है और कस्टमर या यूनिट होल्डर को भेज देता है फॉर द पर्पस ऑफ मेकिंग द पेमेंट. नाउ when we come to the GST is a due based concept. हमें GST on the basis of due, किस दिन पैसा ड्यू हो गया उसके बेसिस पे we need to make the GST payment. So जो what department is contending is they are going into the CRM software and checking each and every demand note, whether each and every demand note as on date which they have been raised are being reflected in the particular month 3B as well as 1 or not. And in case these are not shown, then they are enacting interest over the same in case they are shown at a later stage, and in case they are not shown, they are attracting interest as well as penalties. Whereas in case, now coming back to the second point, so in each and every case, it is very important for each and every developer, taxpayers or a consultant that we map CRM data with our return data so that the figures are reported therein. This is the major point in relation to the outward supply. Now the second point is advance. Suppose a developer has taken advance and they have paid tax over the same and shown in their 3B in the form of advance receipt, and later on they issue a demand note pertaining to the said amount. While issuing the demand note, generally what we have seen in GST audits, while conducting GST audits for various developers, there are high chances that the tax is paid on advance subsequently over which the demand note has been raised have not been adjusted. So what happens is सेम अमाउंट पे, सपोज 10 रुपए मेरे पास एडवांस आया, बाद में मैंने 20 रुपीज का डिमांड नोट रेज करा, तो आई हैव पेड टैक्स ओवर 10 रुपीज इन द फॉर्म ऑफ एडवांस ऑल्सो, एंड in respect of 20 rupees जो मैंने demand note बाद में raise करा है, I have paid tax over that also. So there is a double tax which have been paid by the developer. This is what we have to map, because at the time of demand note we have to adjust the advance over which we have already paid the taxes. This is the second point. Regarding the third point is the taxable value and the tax rate. Whatever we have discussed earlier in relation to tax rate 1, 5, 12, these actually are the effective tax rates, whereas as per the notification, tax rate applicable is 1.5, 7.5, 18, and we are having an abatement of 1:3, that is 1/3 value which pertains to the land. So in case I have raised a demand note of 100 rupees, I was eligible for 1/3 deduction. So the taxable supply was 66.66. Over that amount, I need to pay tax at a rate of 1.5%, 7.5%, or 18%, whatever the case may be. So what we have to show in our 3B is 66.66 as the taxable value and the appropriate rate over it. Effective rate of tax is the rate that we do internally. Now, coming back to the second aspect, that is the ITC aspect. Now, what is most important here is that each and every developer should carry out a 2A and 3B reconciliations, which is prescribed as per rule 36(4). One more important point, even in regarding this reconciliation, in case even the amount has been shown by the vendor in their GSTR1, which has been shown in our GSTR2A, it does not mean that the vendor from which the developer has procured goods or services has complied with the provisions of law. ये भी possible है, उसने सिर्फ GSTR1 भर दिया है, whereas he has not paid the taxes in GSTR3B. Payment of tax is always done through GSTR3B. GSTR1 and GSTR2A is only a way of recording the transaction and checking whether the supplier has recorded the transaction. Tax has always to be paid by through GSTR3B. So we need to check in each and every circumstance whether the vendor who has uploaded the invoice, whether he has also filed his return or not. Second important point in this is each and every contract of the developer should have a clause wherein they state that in case of a mistake by the vendor and because of that mistake the credit has been lapsed in respect of developer, then they get a right for remedy, or they can claim that interest along with the interest or penalties, whatever are applicable from the vendor themselves. Now coming back to the second point, rule 42 and 43 reversals we have to do on a timely manner. Then the third point, suppose a developer company has 3-4 projects, some of which are affordable, some of which are commercial, some of which are residential. In that case, we have to identify the common credit which is attributable to all those projects, and we have to calculate the mechanism how we will reverse that common credit, and different accounting in respect of credit pertaining to specific project have to be mapped out. So this is all regarding the precautions in respect of inward as well as the outward side.
Thank you, Preetamji. Now the next discussion is on development agreements, and we all know the complexities in the development agreement. So we have two parties, landowner and a developer. Landowner gives development right to the developer. Developer builds the project and they execute the joint conveyance to the end customer. The developer pays either the revenue share or the area in form of consideration for the procurement of development, right? So these kinds of area sharing and revenue sharing development agreements are being entered in the market. Kapilji, my question to you is, what do you mean by development rights? Like the way we are talking that landowner gives development right to the developer. What do you actually mean by development right? And what is the nature of development right? Is it good? Is it service? Is it immovable property? A quick answer on this, sir. A quick answer, okay, because we don't have any time. A quick answer.
Okay, very quick answer on this. This term has not been very categorically defined under any law, except for one or two law wherein this has been very vaguely defined. For a basic understanding, development right means you transfer all the economic privileges on the parcel of land in favor of other party for commercial exploitation. and you retain the title of land. In Hindi, आप मालिकाना हक लैंड के ऊपर अपना रखते हो, उसके सिवाय सारे उसके कमर्शियल राइट्स दूसरी पार्टी को दे देते हो फॉर कमर्शियल एक्सप्लॉयटेशन. This is applicable because there is something called urban land ceiling, जहां पे restrictions होती हैं. लैंड ओनर एक सीलिंग के बियॉन्ड लैंड नहीं होल्ड कर सकता. हर स्टेट की लैंड सीलिंग्स अलग होती हैं. Therefore, ये joint development are happening because the land holding are scattered. A developer company cannot own the entire parcel of land and do the construction. Therefore, एक पार्टी लैंड ओनर होती है, एक पार्टी डेवलपर होती है, दोनों मिल जाते हैं. What JDA means, which is called Joint Development Agreement, means landowner agrees that he will transfer the possession, custody and all economic rights. When I say economic rights, लैंड के अंदर वेरियस इकोनॉमिक राइट्स होते हैं. एग्जाम्पल, लैंड की पोजेशन लेके लैंड पे डेवलपमेंट स्टार्ट करना, लैंड पे मॉर्गेज रेस करना, लैंड को मार्केट फाइनेंस करना, लैंड पे बहुत सारी एक्टिविटी और भी आप कर सकते हो, राइट? सो लैंड को मोनेटाइज करने के लिए, देयरफॉर इकोनॉमिक राइट ओवर अ पार्सल ऑफ लैंड आर मल्टीपल. Development right is an agreement wherein a landowner allows the developer to exploit those commercial rights minus the title of land. तो शायद ये इसकी bare understanding है Land Ceiling Act में.
Right, sir. And my next question to you is whether development rights, is it an immovable property sale? Can we say then when I'm transferring a development right, it's a transaction of sale of immovable property outside the ambit of GST. It's a sale of land which is not liable to GST. Can we take such kinds of argument in respect of transfer of development rights?
Okay, just to answer this very quickly, ये argument अगर आप technically देखो तो possible था. Yes, it was possible in service tax regime because the definition of services excluded the transfer of title in an immovable property. वहां पे word जो use था underline करिए, transfer of title in an immovable property. जो डेवलपमेंट राइट होता है वो भी एक टाइटल इन इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी होता है. ऐसी बहुत सारी प्लेथोरा ऑफ रूलिंग्स हैं, हम आपके साथ बाद में शेयर कर लेंगे ये सब चीजें. बट यस, देयर आर सर्टेन रूलिंग्स व्हिच सेज डेवलपमेंट राइट इज अ टाइटल ऑफ इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी सर्विसेज. तो सर्विस टैक्स में डेफिनेशन सेज ट्रांसफर ऑफ टाइटल इन इमूवेबल प्रॉपर्टी सर्विसेज. द मोमेंट यू सेड ट्रांसफर ऑफ टाइटल, तो डीआर गेट्स एक्सक्लूडेड अंडर द डेफिनेशन ऑफ सर्विसेज. और टू दिस देयर इज ऑलरेडी decision which is already out, multiple now are out, wherein they have fortified this position that under a service tax regime till 30th June 2017 the DR transaction which are actually stamped means जो stamp duty जिस पे paid है उस agreement के तहत हुई है, उस पे we will not consider them to be a transaction of a service because they are excluded by their definition under service tax. Whereas when you contrast this with the definition under the GST Act, it says under Schedule 3, what is excluded? Sale of land and sale of building. Whereas development right is neither sale of land, neither sale of building. Therefore, to my limited view, development right will not be covered by Schedule 3. It will still be considered to be a residuary, which will get into the domain of services. Though we may argue that when you are giving all these things, assents, all those things, yes, fancily you can take this argument, but ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा litigative है. To me, the chances of success are very minimal if you try to push this argument in GST regime also because of Schedule 3 specific definition.
Noted. So to conclude, development rights is an intangible immovable property. If I was transferring it under service tax regime, where the exclusion was transfer of title in immovable property, so I could take the shelter of that exclusion. Whereas the exclusion in GST is sale of land. Sale of land is different from transfer of title in immovable property. Hence, sale of transfer of development right is not sale of land because I'm not conveying the ownership of the land. Hence, exclusion will be very difficult in GST. Right, sir?
Correct.
Now, Gaganji, my next question to you is, can you explain the GST impact on area sharing agreements and revenue sharing agreements entered after 1/4/2019? I understand that GST and service tax law has undergone a change since last 10 years. There can be development agreements entered between 1st July 2012 to 30th June 2017, 1st July 2017 till 31st March 2019, and with effect from 1st/4/2019, the new scheme has taken place and development agreements after 1st/4/2019 are also entered. My specific question to you is only in respect of a new development agreement which we will enter right now. If I enter a new development agreement, whether area sharing or revenue sharing, now in April 2020, in May 2020, what will be the GST position from a land payer perspective as well as a developer perspective? Maximum in 5 minutes. It's a request. Gaganji.
Okay, sir. So basically, to understand the exact implication on area sharing and revenue sharing arrangement, we need to first understand the development rights provisions which have been introduced by the government from 1st April 2020. So from 1st April 2020, the first thing is that the development rights taxability have been covered under reverse charge. That is, that the developer is liable to pay GST on receipt of development rights from the landowner. Landowner is not liable to pay GST on the development rights which have been transferred after 1st April 2019. Thereafter, there is also an exemption of the GST on development rights. So this is an interesting fact. On one side, they have given the reverse charge notification. They have also given the exemption. But this exemption is limited to the repeat GST on development right or the date of completion of the project. What does this mean? This means two things. GST to the extent of unbooked residential apartment as on the date of OC or CC is liable to be paid under reverse charge. And secondly, and most importantly, GST on development right to the extent of commercial apartment is also liable to be paid under reverse charge. To conclude, now the development right is under RCM. GST on development rights is exempted to the commercial apartments and unbooked residential unit as on the date of OCCC. And lastly, the rate of GST on development right is 18%. And further to substantiate my argument that when I was saying that to the extent of this entire value of development right, first we need to compute, and thereafter we need to propose them on the basis of carpet area. So now coming to the exact GST implication on area sharing and revenue sharing. So in area sharing, the transactions are two. First, the landowner gives the development right to the developer. Developer sells the under constructed units to the customer. So as far as the supplies of construction services are concerned, we have already discussed that the GST rate applicable on them is 1%, 5% or 12% with ITC or without ITC. But as far as supply of development right is concerned, the revenue given to the landowner as part of the JDA, say assuming 300 crores have been given to the landowner as a 30% and the entire project revenue is 1000 crore rupees. So 300 crores can be said to be the value of development right. I am not going into the discussion of reduction of land value, assuming it to be a value of development right 300 crores. So 18% GST will be leviable on 300 crores, which comes out to be 54 crores in our case. And this 54 crores I will have to make three buckets into the portion of carpet area of commercial apartment, booked residential apartments, and unbooked residential apartment. So just taking a short example, 54 crores, say 20% is the commercial apartment area. So 10.8 crore is the GST liability on development rights pertaining to commercial apartment. Liability is for residential. And if say 10% is the unbooked residential apartments, then 43.2 crores ka 10% will become GST on unbooked residential apartments. So this is in nutshell. Lastly, in case of area sharing, the transactions are manifold. Landowners and developer enter into JDA. Landowner gives development rights. Landowner gives development rights to the developer. Developer provides construction services to the customer also, and he also allocates the under constructed units to the landowner as a part of JDA. And further, landowner can transfer the units to the ultimate customer. So as far as supplies of construction services are concerned, we have already said that it is liable to be taxed at 1%, 5% or 12% depending upon the classification of the project. But as far as value of development rights is concerned, in case of area sharing, the government has inserted a paragraph in the exemption notification that value of similar apartments, apartments I am giving to the landowner as a part of JDA, though the value of those apartments, value of similar apartment charged from independent buyers nearest to the date of transfer of DR will be the value of development rights in case of area sharing. So assuming there are 3000 units in the project and 30% is the landowner share, so 900 units की मुझे value निकालनी है similar apartments वाली, जो कि मैंने independent buyer से charge करी थी. and that will become the value of development right, and remaining will be the same implication as we discussed in the revenue sharing agreement कि मुझे उसके बाद में 3 bucket बनाने, commercial है, GST rate 18% है, and reverse charge में liability है. और sir.
Noted, Gaganji. So just to conclude, in case of area sharing and revenue sharing, there is no tax implication on the landowner. The transaction which landowner undertakes is transfer of development rights. And on transfer of development rights, RCM is payable by the developer. The tax has to be paid by the developer under RCM, reverse charge mechanism. Now in respect of commercial project, RCM is payable. There is no exemption. The developer has to pay RCM. In respect of residential project, there is an exemption. No GST is payable on development rights by the development and development rights by the developer under RCM mechanism to the extent of units sold. To the extent of units remaining unsold, same and 90% units are sold, 10% units are unsold in respect of residential project. The developer will have to pay RCM only to the extent of 10% of the units. Whereas in commercial, there is no such exemption. And with regard to the point of taxation, when do we have to pay? When the developer has to pay under RCM. In case of area sharing agreement, whether it is residential or is it commercial, the liability will be on the date of OC. And in case of revenue sharing agreement, in case of residential project, the liability will be on the date of OC. Whereas in case of commercial agreement, it will be on the date of agreement. Now moving forward, I know this is a very big complex and we have multiple issues related to area sharing, development sharing. We will take these issues and during our question and answer session. Now moving on to our next question. Pitamji, this is for you. My specific question to you, very specific question to you. There is a project started in 2017, July 2017. There were 100 units in this project. Now it is completed in April 2020. 60% units are sold, 40% units remains unsold. Client, the developer must have taken the credit since inspection of GST. From July 2017 till April 2020, whatever GST he has paid on his procurement, he has taken credit. He is doing a commercial project. His output rate is 12% in the commercial project. Now at the time of OC, 60% units have been sold, 40% units are unsold. What is the reversal mechanism for a real estate developer? How he has to reverse? A quick answer.
Okay, so this is an example pertaining to the fact that the project has been initiated post GST after 1st July 2017. In such a case, all the credit would have been accumulated during the GST period only for a developer. Now to understand, the reversal has to be carried out under Rule 42. What Rule 42 says is that even in case a company has 5, 6 or maybe many projects, the reversal under Rule 42 for each project has to be done project wise and not a GSTN wise. So as soon as the project OC is completed, we have to do the reversal therein in the year in which the OC have been received. Now coming back to the question, 60% have been sold and 40% unit have been unsold. So it is not that the 40% reversal we have to make in respect of the credit. The reversal have to be made on the basis of carpet area, not on the basis of turnover, and also not on the basis of unit sold or unsold. It has to be important that the proportionate carpet area which has not been sold over the total carpet area, this is the basis on which the reversal has to be done. And in this Rule 42 was not capturing the real estate in respect of real estate reversals, but in financial year 2018 there has been specific insertion in Rule 42 which is applicable retrospectively from 1st of July 2017 for the purpose of reversal. So in each and every case, the project when the OC has been received, we have to do reversals on the basis of Rule 42. Tushar.
Okay. The answer to is simply I have to reverse the entire credit which I have taken from July 2017 till the date of OC based on the carpet area ratio. What about if my project was started in pre-GST regime and I had taken certain service tax credit in pre-GST regime? Now the OC has come. Am I required to reverse the credit taken in pre-GST regime, that is credit of service tax? Am I required to reverse now when OC has come now?
Okay, Tushar. So this is a very, very good question, and this has been disputable. Even DGGI on ground level are raising demand over the same issue. But in my opinion, this is a very, very good case to argue. At the time of eligibility of the credit, when the receipt of service were there, the intention of the developer was always to make a taxable supply. He was not, it was not a known factor at the time of receipt of the services whether he will be able to sell the full uh, uh, area or not. But his intention was always to use this credit in respect of taxable supply, and there has been n number of case laws pertaining to the same in favor of an SSC. So we can always take the view of those case laws, and it is a good case to argue that the credit in pertaining to these projects in respect of the service tax regime need not be reversed.
So based on what we discussed, there is a good case to say that service tax credit need not be reversed. There are certain favorable judgments. However, in respect of GST credit, I have to reverse. I don't have any choice.
Absolutely.
My next question is to you, Kapilji. Now we are aware that due to COVID-19, developers will try to adopt various business strategies and in fact are facing various cash flow problems, etc. I will just touch base upon few of the issues being faced by developers and will take your views. My first specific question is, we know developer has entered into a builder buyer agreement with the customer. There are milestones which are given in the builder buyer agreement, and it may so happen that the milestone has been triggered in the month of April 2020, May 2020, pursuant to which I have to raise my invoice. Similarly, I may have entered into a rental agreement and I am supposed to raise monthly invoices on monthly invoices. Similarly, I might have entered into maintenance agreement with the customer and I'm supposed to raise monthly invoices. But we are aware that many customers at ground level will may not pay us the amount. They are still negotiating with us. If I raise the invoice, I will have to deposit the GST. That will be a big burden on me. And you understand that cash flow is a biggest concept and biggest problem in real estate. So how do I structure all these transactions? How do I foresee when I am not aware whether my customer will pay or not? Should I stop raising the bill? What should I do? What should be the best possible mechanism for the real estate developer?
Okay, so just to address that, let us break it into two parts. One is there is a contract which has a milestone. Those milestones have occurred in this period of say April or May when the lockdown is enforced. But the question is, there is a dilemma that whether should we raise demand because we are aware that the chances of demand being honored are very less. That's the first question. Let me try and address that part. Well, a contract between a developer and a buyer is already a bipartite contract wherein two parties have agreed to a milestone. The correct strategy for me would be, considering all the people today, banks, airlines, so on and so forth, have given you a window wherein they are willing to defer the payment to a period post lockdown where things get opened up, transactions do get started, and you do start getting some cash flows in. Considering everybody has taken a conscious call that in this period everybody will be cash strapped, so therefore chances will be less. Let us try to exclude this period from a milestone and defer the milestone. What I'm trying to say is, a contract between two parties can be amended. If both the parties, say a developer chooses to amend the contract and say that the milestone which are falling due within this period have been revised to a certain extent, and if that can be very well captured in the document in form of email, demand note, or whatever form you want to capture, then yes, you can take a legal position that the milestone which are falling within this period stand deferred to a period whenever you both the parties announce it to be applicable from. That's the first part of question, because you have to understand contract cannot be one-way contract. It has to be consent, because whenever you propose, the other party has to agree. Therefore, your sending a request has to be somewhere taken by him so that the contract cycle is getting completed. That's one part. Let us try and address the second part of question also in this. What happens if I've raised my demand and they fail to pay the demand? Let me clearly agree, if you proceed with the same milestone and raise demand, nobody can save you in terms of milestone. If you choose to continue the same old milestone, all the demands which are due will be considered to be due within this period, and you will be required to discharge your tax liability based on the period as and when you have raised those demands. The only thing I'm trying to say, Tushar, to audience is,
Right.
If you are sure that this time of crisis is a time of crisis and I want to give a window to my vendors or my buyers for a certain period post lockdown is there, so that their cash flow is improved and my position is also getting strapped, because I would also be offered to pay tax on a cash basis because my demand will not be honored. Both the parties are agreeing and shifting the milestone to a next period. If it can be done, very well, you can do it legally, no bindation. And the milestone gets shifted to a new milestone, which you can say after lockdown, 15 days after lockdown is restricted or opened, or whatever you want to fix as a convenient milestone. That's one. Tushar, you've also asked an important question of rentals. What happens to the rentals?
Absolutely.
So, right, similar practice can be there for rentals, but I see from my people and my clients at least are following up in saying that we don't want to forego on the rental. We will provide them a window by which they can pay later, but we will not waive off. Tushar, answer is contractually whether you are willing to waive the rent or are you willing to defer the rent. You have to address this question first. क्या उस पीरियड का रेंटल आप छोड़ना चाहते हो या डेफर करना चाहते हो? प्लस पहले सबसे पहले इसका आंसर दो. फर्स्ट ट्राई एंड फिक्स एन आंसर टू इट. If it is merely a deferment, then you can very well exchange a letter that the rent due for the month of April and May shall be payable on so and so date. That can be done. Or there are other people, Tushar, which have come up to me and said, sir, for the month of April, what I will say is the 25% of April rent will be payable along with the May rent, 25 in June, 25 in July, and 25, so that the buyer does not actually bear the burden of paying double rent in a particular month. He actually staggers in 4 ways. So it is depending upon you parties, both the parties, the lesser and the less, they can very well shift the milestone. Number one. Number two, if you are looking to a complete waiver, then again a similar process needs to be followed. You need to communicate very clearly to the buyer that for this period, considering you could not open shop, I could not provide you services, therefore I will not charge rent for this period. In that case, there will be no liability for payment of GST. Tushar, there is another question to it also, which you have not asked. I will ask. What happens to maintenance charges of a commercial property?
Right.
This similar thing will apply there also. So the problem for real estates are never ending. So there will be problem on maintenance charges because the maintenance company will be forced to pay all the salaries of the people who she has employed. Electricity ka bill they will pay. They will pay all the securities companies, so on and so forth. They will incur the cost even when the property is locked down. Now think from their perspective that how on earth will they waive that off? They will definitely charge. We are looking for a time when there will be definitely lockheads between both tenants and this, and you are looking for a potential commercial dispute to come up in this period. That's my honest take on it. But yes, subject to your communication, you can defer, you can waive, but the documentation should be self-sufficient, so it speaks very clearly as to what you are doing. I hope I have answered this, Tushar, for you.
Perfectly, sir. So the crux is the documentation which I maintain and revision in the terms and the conditions of the contract that will play a crucial role in deciding the tax implications. My
Correct.
next question is to you, Pritamji. Now, many developers are trying to give freebies to augment their sales to the end customer. They are offering free car, tour packages. They are increasing the specifications in the unit by providing high-end items, etc. So just a principle which these developers should keep in mind for attaining best GST efficiency. Can you just elaborate on the tax implication of such freebies and what precautions they should take care while framing such marketing schemes?
Okay, so Tushar, regarding the freebies, these freebies can be divided into two parts, which we have already discussed earlier also. These freebies into two parts. First part is whether these freebies, we can say that the freebies forms the integral part or the ancillary part of the construction services. Second, whether these freebies does not form the integral or the ancillary part of the in relation to the construction services. So regarding the freebies, for example, if we take about talk about furnitures, furnitures, lightings, or any other case which is affixed in relation to the construction services, in that case we can very well say that the intention of the developer in relation to these freebies was in relation to the construction services for which he is already taking consideration. So in that case, that can be included in the construction services. But when we talk about car or any other part which is not in relation to the or which we cannot align with the construction services, then the concept of mixed supply can evolve or come over. So we have to categorize our marketing schemes in such a manner that we are out of free mixed supply concept, and even in case we are inside the mixed supply concept, we are not involving the goods which are at a higher rate than the rate prescribed for these services. So the marketing strategies has to be framed in such a manner which is most efficient and tax compliant in respect of the developers.
Perfect. But just to conclude, I have to take following two precautions. My freebies should be either integral or incidental to the construction service, or the rate of tax on my freebies, if it is not integral or ancillary to my construction, then such rate of tax on freebies should be less or equal to the rate of tax as applicable on construction service. Now,
according to me, Tushar, sorry to intervene. Yes. According to me, the question is far more complex than what we have tried to address. Like just what you're seeing on your screen, there are 4 pointers written to it. I think we will have to have another session to promote these schemes only. Just to give you an example, when you say that there is a discount given by developer not to cancel. Now, therefore,
this is a separate issue, sir. That's actually a separate issue, right?
Now, so therefore, what you're trying to say is this is a very classical term given to it in UK VAT called inducement payment. This is referred to as an inducement payment because you are inducing the buyer, you are incentivizing the buyer not to cancel because you foresee your discount. This is considered to be services provided by you rather than an integral link to the contract. What I'm trying to say is the underlying message I'm trying to give to my listeners is simple. We need to be very careful with respect to what kind of incentive we are offering to the buyer for holding this difficult time. If the incentives are linked to the construction, you have case to say no problem, no extra tax to arise on that part. But if the incentives are on a different footing, wherein we are just trying to incentivize for say early payment or not trying to cancel him, trying to induce him for that, those examples will be more towards the category wherein they will be regarded as a separate supply of services in itself, and then you need to see the tax implication. So you need to be a bit of careful while formulating this promotion scheme is something I want to tell you very clearly on this part.
Thank you, sir. Before we conclude this session, my last topic for the day is anti-profiteering. When we talk about real estate and we don't talk about anti-profiteering issues, we will not do justice. I know you can have a separate session on anti-profiteering itself, but can you just give insight in 2 minutes about the latest anti-profiteering trends in real estate, and thereafter we will go to the question and answer sessions of the audience.
Just to address anti-profiteering in 2 minutes is injustice to the topic, but let me try to do some sense to it. Anti-profiteering refers to a scenario wherein the developer is entitled to extra credit in GST. This scenario will be applicable only for the ongoing project where you are getting the credit. Naya project mein anti-profiteering, which has started after 1/4/2019, may not arise, but we are discussing the other project. When we are discussing the other project, what are the extra credit? Extra credit refers to the credit which was leviable on goods. Ab goods pe kaun sa tax lagta hai? Just to give you an example, excise duty levied on cement and steel purchased earlier in the service tax regime was not available to a developer. But in GST post 1/7/2017, the credit of all excise etc. were made available to a developer. Now this extra credit which a developer gets is something which is going to his benefit. Whereas when he has done his pricing for the unit, he has done his pricing based on the service tax regime. When he has decided his pricing, keeping into mind that he will not get a credit of this excise duty on steel and cement, just for a plain interpretation, right? If he is not getting, he would have factored it as a part of cost. Whereas now he's getting an extra credit. The anti-profiteering mechanism is actually anti-inflation mechanism, which is actually introduced so that for the extra credit which developer is entitled to get in GST is not pocketed by him, he should pass on that extra credit in GST region to the other party by way of a discount in the demand which are falling after the GST regime. This is a short, complex version of what anti-profiteering. Let me tell you, it is more difficult to implement than it is to explain to the other parties, because the calculation of this profiteering benefit is a complex equation which you have to solve. But only to conclude this part, Tushar, we need to be extra careful while advising anybody on anti-profiteering, because the manner in which this has to be computed is not given by department. There are contrary method adopted by department to compute how this will arise. In light of this, you need to be extra careful as to how should you give effect to the anti-profiteering method, because the method department is taking is leading to some different results. I am not saying they are incorrect, but I am only trying to say that the methods are different in which department is approaching and in which a traditional anti-profiteering has to be computed. This is my answer. But we need to be very careful. For ongoing projects, we definitely need to factor the profit and we need to pass on that benefit to the buyer. If we don't do that, we are looking for a problem.
Thank you, Kapilji. In fact, we would like to thank all the panelists for the wonderful insight of the various issues raised. Now we will start the question and answer session from the audience. In fact, I will request even the panelists to look at the questions and try to answer. Few of the questions I have selected. So one of the question is, when we were talking about the definition of affordable housing unit, so it talked about that the price of such unit should be 45 lakhs. Whether this 45 lakhs will include ancillary charges or it will include GST, how to compute this 45 lakhs? Gaganji?
So coming to the gross amount charge, basically the notification in case of affordable residential apartment, it used the words gross amount charge. Further, the notification also defines that the consideration for the constructed unit, and they have also said that it should include any other amount charged by the developer from the buyer, including PLC, development charges, parking charges, common facility charges. So in my view, the part of agreement value on which I am paying GST at the rate of 1%, that entire value will be considered for the purpose of determining whether the gross amount is 45 lakhs have breached or not.
Okay. The next question is, this is to you, Kapilji. A very genuine and a very popular question. I am an owner of a land. I'm owning a land, say 250 square yard, 300 square yard, and I give development rights to the developer to build 4 floors. He will take 1 floor and I will keep 3 floors. So the transaction which I'm undertaking by giving of transfer of development rights to the developer, I'm only an individual. So I understood from your conversation that transfer of DR is taxable. There are certain exemptions, etc. But under section, the first principle which we need to satisfy is that supply should be in the course of business. Supply should be in the course of furtherance of business and commerce. Can I say that when an individual property owner or a farmer, a landowner who is a farmer, individual property owner, he is giving development right as a one-time activity to the developer, he is in the course doing this activity in the course of business. Can we say it is not in the course of business? Can we take that argument?
Tushar, I'm very clear on this point that if you are an individual person and you are not a GST registered person and not having any kind of business interest, then definitely this argument of furtherance of business holds water. Very clear, very clear. What? For 2 reasons. A, on single one-time transactions, there is no mechanism to tax them, because these are transactions which will happen only once a lifetime. So you will not build your flat every day and sell it. This will be a transaction which is not your general business. आप ये काम भी नहीं करते हो, right? So to me, this furtherance of business is validly applicable to a person who is doing this. I think I have answered this question privately also, but just for the sake of repetition also, when you are doing it for your own consumption, you are building up a building for your own consumption, you are not selling. Therefore, there is no DR in that case. But in case you are doing this as a one-time measure, not intending to do any sales, question does not arise. If it is only a single transaction, it is and not your routine business, and there is no intention to do this transaction ever again, I think Tushar, section 7 definitely applicable. You cannot say that this is in furtherance of his business, because there is no intention to do this transaction ever again. Going by the nature, according to me, should not be leviable. I am more than confident but nothing raises department to come back and raise a concern on this. Should there be a concern also? It is a very fightable case to me.
Noted, sir. The next question is, say a developer has actually sold the apartment in pre-GST regime. He has sold the apartment in pre-GST regime. He raised demand note, paid service tax, and now he's raising the invoice in GST regime also. He's raising demand notes in GST regime. In respect of demand note, which was raised in service tax regime, he is now issuing a credit note. He's issuing some credit note due to deficiency of service for any reason. Whether he can take the benefit of section 142 to be transition situation, which talk about raising of credit note. Gagan, this question is for you, Gagan ji. Gagan, am I audible? I think there is some communication. Kapil ji, am I audible?
Yes, Tushar, you are audible.
I think there is some connection.
To me, yes.
This question being very interesting, let Kapil ji answer because he can give a great insight over the same, Tushar.
Yes, Kapil ji.
So let me try to break it. If you are giving a credit note for an earlier transaction, the only way mechanism is available in section 142 is you have to apply for a cash refund. And whenever you go for a refund, again you have to test the same water, whether time limit is there or not. You can't, when there is a time limit prescribed under 11B of 1 year, today for something which is raised in 2014, 15, 16, you can't today go in 20 and ask for refund. I think to me, the answer is technically you could definitely take shelter of this, but considering the time frame which is given for application of refund, and you need to read them in context to give meaning, because whenever you say the earlier provision will apply, earlier provision means you are repealing those provisions and you are trying to apply those provisions as they are in the service tax regime. Then you have to automatically go to section 83, borrow 11B. 11B gives you a time limit of 1 year. Therefore, you are getting struck in time limit.
Perfectly fine, sir. Sir, there was another transitional provision which talked about downward revision of prices.
Correct.
So that was with respect to cancellation, as rightly said by you, not possible. But there was a provision that in respect of downward revision of prices, I mean, at least in the CGST Act, what I can recall, not under the SGST Act, for the CGST Act, that in case of downward revision of prices,
आधा मिल जाएगा. You are saying आधा मिल जाएगा.
30 days. So can we take shelter of that if my case is of downward revision, not cancellation?
You can do that, but tell me, where will the procedure application go? Why will the other state authority give you a benefit of that? अगर आप state में registered हो,
right?
Jurisdiction आपका state का है. So ये question is actually they have multifolds. So if you are having a jurisdiction in the state, आपका claim आगे जाएगा नहीं, आप application लगाए रखो जिंदगी भर, then you go to a writ court for this. Yes, technically what you are saying downward revision में provision नहीं है, you can go under that, but your challenges are also there in downward revision also, equally.
Perfectly, sir. So we have to drill down into much detail so before coming out into any conclusion. Sir, there is another issue. What is the GST implication on purchase and sale of investor flats who buys the flats and may sell before occupancy?
Okay, Tushar, I have unfortunately 90% of these questions have been answered on a private basis, but for benefit of all, I will answer this in one moment.
Right.
Whenever any investor buys a flat, try and understand, investor cannot sell a flat because investor is not owning the land. So there cannot be a sell by an investor. There can only be an agreement to buy. Essentially what happens is, in an essential agreement, when you buy, investor buys a flat, there is a clause which says the developer will book the property in the name of investor or his nominee. So what investor does is, investor goes back and find a new buyer and goes back to develop, says, now this is the new buyer, he is my assignee, kindly register property in his name. So this is how transaction happens. These are also known as underwriting agreement. My answer to this is simple. There is no sell by the investor. Investor is only an agent. The profit, which is difference between the sale price of the eventual customer and the original booking price, is a commission, which is a spread earned by the underwriter. To me, there is an 18% GST on that particular amount. The bigger question, which is not asked by the gentleman, is on what value stamp duty will be paid. Right? Just to give you illustration, these questions are not very simple. Try and understand, Tushar. डेवलपर से 4,000 रुपए में यूनिट बुक हुआ टू बायर. नाउ इन्वेस्टर गोज एंड फाइंड अ बायर जो 6,000 रुपए देने को तैयार हो जाता है. ही इज विलिंग टू पे 6,000. द 2,000 मनी actually is pocketed by the investor in between. The buyer only gets a property at 6,000. 2,000 he pays to the investor. 4,000 money goes to the developer. Question is whether GST will be applicable on 6,000, whether stamp duty will be applicable on 6,000. The answer to me is yes, it will be applicable on 6,000, because whenever the agreement is assigned in favor of new buyer, the price revision take place. Accordingly, the stamp duty and the other implication will come into picture. Buyer will actually end up facing loss on that part, because there will be a differential hit of stamp duty and GST on the value that he has paid to the developer.
Thank you, Kapilji. Next question is on recovery of electricity charges by the maintenance company. We know in a real estate, you have maintenance company, they recover maintenance charges as well as electricity charges. And this electricity charges can further be bifurcated into two parts. One is the electricity charges for the common area, and second is the charges for the unit per se, which is recovered on metered basis. So what are the tax implications on such recovery of electricity charges?
Your answer in two line is very clear. You also know, I also know. Whenever you are selling metered electricity, means you are selling electricity as electricity. Electricity has been classified under goods under the GST schedule. There is an entry called electrical energy. In that entry, if you are selling the metered electricity to the buyer within his unit, irrespective of type of electricity here means it can be by way of a grid or it can be by way of DG supply. In both the cases, to my view, it will be considered to be sale of electricity, not subject matter of GST. For a common area, there are certain cases that I am seeing that people are coming and saying for common area, why should we not apply a same? So people are contesting to me, in case of common area, this ground is not applicable at all for simple reason, because there is no one-to-one consumption of electricity. Common area is always maintained by a maintenance company. So the electricity is used to providing the maintenance services. Therefore, it shall form part of maintenance services on which 18% GST shall apply.
So GST applicable on recovery charges in respect of common area, whereas if I recovered on metered basis, no GST applicable. Sir, where no
Perfect.
GST is applicable, then in respect of input tax credit, am I required to reverse my common credit also?
Yes, because the moment you are saying taking example or taking the shelter of an exemption notification, it has to go as a part of exempted goods. The moment you take it as part of exempted good, your turnover shall be split up into two parts. You will end up losing money on that.
Okay. And I think there are few other questions, but the facts of these questions are not very clear. So I request the audience to put these questions in the Facebook of Webtel Facebook account in detail. We will go through these questions and answer you privately. The last question for the day. In respect of revenue sharing agreement, I have given the development rights to the developer. Developer builds 100 units, sells 90% of the units, 10% of the units remain unsold. The gentleman is asking that the 10% unit which is unsold, when I sell those unsold units post CC, there is no GST. Is there any other taxation in respect of that 10% unit which is sold after CC? Maybe I think he's asking in respect of reverse charge under development rights.
Correct. So the notification of GST granting exemption to a development right, as Gagan explained earlier, is giving a conditional exemption. If you are able to sell before the completion certificate all the unit, then GST does not apply. In case you are not able to sell 10% of the unit before OC or a CC date, then on that 10% of unsold inventory, there is a 5% of levy which they are asking to pay under reverse charge in the hands of a developer promoter. Is that clear, Tushar? That's first point. Now, in that case, whenever you pay 5% tax under reverse charge, the cost automatically goes up by 5%. And there is no other tax which will be payable by the buyer. Buyer will pay only a single consideration, but there could be a difference in prices, because if the developer is supposed to pay 5% of reverse charge, he will definitely add that to the value and recover from buyer. But that will be more in the nature of recovery by way of a cost and not by way of a tax. So there will be no GST to address you, but prices may vary on that part, to be honest. Hello?
Rajiv?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Shubham, you can take it forward. I think so. Tushar is not there. So I think so. All the
I mean,
most.
Hello. I think, sir, there is a glitch in connection with Tushar, sir.
Can you
yeah,
take
am I
up any?
audible?
Yes, you
Yeah, yeah,
are
Tushar,
now
you are
audible.
audible now.
Can you
Now
also
audible.
discuss about the redevelopment? Just in short, the
Okay,
redevelopment
so
part.
sir,
The
redevelopment part
redevelopment
is
model.
also question. I think I also wrote to one of the person that we will take it up. Unfortunately, for paucity of time, we could not take it up. Let me try to break it in 2 minutes. So the redevelopment is also the way Maharashtra has put up a lobby before the authorities is exempt redevelopment, but unfortunately, the government is not budging. Redevelopment is on same line as a transfer of development right or an FSI sale is. What essentially happens in a redevelopment project is a developer goes to a pro society which is owned by 100 number of buyers. So there is a society on which there are already lying people. 100 people are there, part of a society which is owning that society. Now under a redevelopment scheme, you go back to the authority, take the permission that we will reconstruct and rehabilitate these 100 people, we'll give them the 100 units. But because we are doing the redevelopment, please allow us some extra development. That extra development which is allowed by the government is by way of a TDR or an FSI, which is given by the authority at the cost of redevelopment done. Right? The extra FSI which get is used to develop the property, which is then sold by the developer who is undertaking the redevelopment project. Now, again, this is almost on the same pedestal as a joint development agreement, wherein in case of a joint development agreement, you have a single owner. Here you have 100 landowners.